So it's official, there is a brand new municipality in the United States. It's called Starbase City, and it was basically founded by Elon Musk. So you might be wondering why and how, but first of all, let me show you where this city is on the map. All right, so in the United States, in the great state of Texas, right on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, right down here on the border between the United States and Mexico, right at the very shoreline, the closest city is Brownsville. And this is it right here, Boca Chica Village, Texas, United States. So this is where the SpaceX offices are currently based. And apparently SpaceX has purchased a lot of the land in this area where they essentially built residences for SpaceX employees. So this Boca Chica Village is essentially going to be renamed to Starbase, essentially granting SpaceX being the one that runs this area, and the residents of this area essentially, as appointed officials, the ability to have the rights and privileges of an actual city and independence from, I'm assuming, the local county. So from the Houston Public Media, SpaceX's Starbase is about 20 miles outside of Brownsville. Here, Musk Company is developing and testing the rocket eventually meant to take humans to Mars. The complex is massive, a sleek modern compound that runs for miles along State Highway 4. Other than Starbase, the area is mostly completely rural, otherwise dominated by tidal flats, bays, and rivers. The state highway wends past the SpaceX rocket launch pad. The road ends at Boca Chica Beach, a public beach popular with locals that hugs the border with Mexico. Boca Chica Village, a small beach town founded in the 1960s, sits in the compound's midst. SpaceX has bought up almost all of the houses there, adding Airstream trailers and tiny homes for its employees. SpaceX officials say only 10 of the properties are not owned by the company, 10 of the properties in the area. And then I'm assuming that they literally just have these trailers all over the place for SpaceX employees. I'm sure that's a perk of their employment. So the whole incorporation process for this city was essentially proposed last year in December, and the vote was essentially held today, but the early voting, I believe, started a few days earlier. And funnily enough, it's on May the 4th, you know, the Star Wars day, that this vote was supposed to happen. And so the proposed city area is only going to be about 1.5 miles long, but I'm assuming that they'll probably extend it in different directions in the future. And approximately there's 500 residents in that particular area. I believe that only 283 of them were actually eligible to vote for this proposition. And then with the vast majority of the people actually being residents in that place are SpaceX employees. So there was no realistic chance that Starbase wasn't going to be incorporated. This vote was basically a shoo-in. And so this is the most important part of everything. It's why Elon Musk and SpaceX wanted to have the city incorporated. You got to understand that essentially to be able to operate such a large company, such a large operation that they do over there, launching rockets into space, it requires a lot of open space, it requires a lot of regulation, it requires a lot of management of the entire area. And so SpaceX essentially has to cooperate or to coordinate with the local authorities to be able to close certain roads, to be able to prevent certain access to certain areas, because this is technically a public beach space. But they need to be able to put in place those restrictions to ensure that their launches and their operations as a company is safe for the local population. And with dealing with the local authorities, there's always going to be certain contentions to what this company will have the ability to do. And it will never be a situation to where SpaceX as a company will have full autonomy to be able to operate exactly how they would like to. They essentially have to follow the rules of an external body that regulates how they can conduct business in that particular area. And so incorporating as a city essentially gives Starbase the autonomy that an independent municipality or a city would enjoy, and it makes their operations a lot more efficient. So we're talking about being able to have a local governance to where they can essentially appoint SpaceX employees, leadership individuals in that company, to have also leadership positions within that community, within that city. It's been well documented that it's been quite a contentious process between SpaceX and their Starbase and dealing with the local authorities in being able to accomplish everything they would like to do in the most efficient way. And becoming a city grants them so many more autonomous liberties, that this is just another step in being able to gain more power and control in that area. Incorporating as a city gives them control over infrastructure. They can build roads, they can control the utilities. Basically, if they want to expand more rapidly in the future, they have the ability to now take care of that internally in a way that aids the development according to SpaceX's needs. Because it's a really big thing when it comes to permits and the whole bureaucratic restrictions that exist in the United States. You would have no idea. You would not believe how many restrictions there are in the United States, how much bureaucracy holds developers back from being able to build, from being able to control infrastructure. It's insane. But as this becomes a real city, they can develop a local governance, and I believe that they've already nominated people for leadership positions within this new community. They can create laws, they can levy taxes. This is becoming a real city, and it'll be very interesting to see how that develops over time. And I think what's really interesting is that at this point in time, you know, most cities are built, most towns are built, and it's very rare that new towns get incorporated. But in United States history, the concept of a company or corporation building a town or a city around its operations, maybe it's a plant or a factory of some sort, this is part of American history. There was a point in which 3% of the population essentially lived in company towns serving a business or a corporation that they were employed by. And there's something I want to show you. So this is an article that references this book, The Company Town, the Industrial Edens and Satanic Mills that shaped the American economy. Basically, we can't go through all of this, but I just want to read you some of the most important parts. So company towns are both quintessentially American and supremely anti-American institutions. They are the corporate equivalents of cities on a hill, monuments to the power and creativity of America's corporate fathers. But at the same time, they represent a triumph of the collective over the individual, places where bosses own the workers' heart, soul, skin, and guts, to borrow a phrase from Dashiell Hammett. Motor moguls built supersized ones in the Midwest. At their height, there were more than 2,500 such towns, housing 3% of the population. Company towns solved a practical problem. The cotton kings and coal barons had to build towns because their vital resources, water and coal, were in the out-of-the-way places. Motor and steel moguls had to build them because the working-class armies that were needed to manufacture their products grew faster than local governments could cope with. All right, now listen to this. So company towns usually came in one of two forms, the satanic and the utopian. The satanic type were little better than gulags, where workers were forced to live in company shacks and spend their money in company shops. You could pass a lifetime in a company town without knowing any real freedom. But many other towns were monuments to the utopian spirit. Benevolent bosses such as Milton Hershey, a chocolate king, and Henry Kaiser, a shipping magnate, went out of their way to provide their workers with not just decent houses, but with schools, libraries, and hospitals. This utopian impulse inevitably went hand in hand with benevolent bosses. Hershey served as his town's mayor, constable, and fire chief, and employed a squad of moral police to spy on the workers. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of criticisms and there's going to be a lot of pushback from certain people that will not be happy about the fact that Elon Musk has a new city and the fact that he was able to do that. But you got to think for a second, is he going to be building a satanic mill or is he going to be building a utopia? Is he going to build an Eden? It's like the way that I see it. If you've ever seen Star Trek, there's like, I think they made like 3 of them. The base that all of these space people were living on and studying on and practicing and learning on, and then they would go on all of these space missions. That base could essentially be what starbase will eventually be in the future. And I think that the idea that he's trying to build something like that, it's very intriguing, and I'm very curious to see how that's going to turn out. But I imagine it's going to be very cool, and I'm a huge fan of science fiction, so I imagine this to be a significant net positive. And of course, this new city has a mayor. So from the San Antonio Express, the new city's first mayor will be Robert Bobby Peden, vice president of SpaceX's Texas test and launch operations. He ran unopposed and received 216 votes. Wow, a whole 216. Starbase's first city commissioners will be Jordan Buss, Starbase's environmental health and safety site manager, and Jenna Petstrelska, a Starbase resident related to Joe Petstrelka, who is SpaceX's vice president of spacecraft engineering. They also ran unopposed and received 177 and 188 votes respectively. The election hands Musk a victory he's long sought for his South Texas manufacturing and launch site. He first floated the idea of making it an official town in 2021, but earlier attempts didn't succeed. He tried and failed to have both the US Postal Service and US Board on Geographic Names rename the area that's been known as Boca Chica Village and Copernic Shores. So obviously, it's never going to be a situation where this happens, this city is created, and everyone's going to be okay with it. Like I said, there's going to be some criticism. In all fairness, let's take a look at this criticism, where it's from and what it's about. Critics like the South Texas Social Justice Network, the Environmental Justice Network, have cited environmental concerns about whether the area should be incorporated. The group warned that the beach's ecosystem is under threat if SpaceX gains control over the area. Christopher Basaldu, co-founder of the group, told the Washington Post he used to visit the beach as a child. These were pristine, beautiful lands, like literally a gem or a treasure of a beautiful beach, and also sacred lands of the original indigenous people of the land. He said, I have no confidence that SpaceX is going to become a responsible neighbor just because they become officially a sissy. In fact, I think that things will get worse. The group is staging a protest at the beach on Saturday, just before polls close, to voice its opposition to Starbase's proposed incorporation. Not that I think they'll be very successful, but this is their essentially community action and protest leaflet. Boca Chica belongs to the public, not Elon Musk or SpaceX, and they're going to be meeting from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., or they already have met to protest this. We're losing access to our sacred beach due to SpaceX's daily rocket testing operations. I think that one of the biggest qualms, one of the biggest issues that the locals have with SpaceX being in that area, and there's not a lot of these people, by the way, but there are still some people. Basically, this was open land, free land that anyone can travel on. I hear there's a nice beach over there that people liked to go to, and it's a gem, you know? It's a sacred area in this community, and I get that. That makes sense. But I know that SpaceX has an agreement with the local authorities, or at least they had that agreement previously, that there was only certain times that they would be able to operate. Like, I don't think that SpaceX is trying to be an arsehole. I don't think that on every weekend they're going to specifically have launches at those times, stopping people from being able to access or enjoy the beach. I would imagine that they probably do their launches during the week at times where people won't necessarily be in that area. But at the end of the day, you know, when it comes to advancing the human race, when it comes to the future of space travel, can't we sacrifice one beach in order to let that happen? You know, it's like at the end of the day, it's not the only beach in that area. It's surrounded by beachland. There's so much free open space in that place that there's other places that people can go. And it's not to say that the beaches will be closed off forever. No, it's just to allow SpaceX to do what they need to do. And it's safe. It's necessary for that to happen. So in terms of environmental concerns, I mean, it's not like SpaceX is causing insane amounts of pollution and harming the wildlife and making the place toxic and unsuitable for human inhabitation. No. But I just think that in the future, when they do eventually build out this starbase and they have, you know, thousands and thousands and more people over there, they'll be able to enjoy the beach as well. I don't think the beach is going anywhere. So all in all, this is definitely a net positive. I see huge, amazing, great things coming out of this. I think it's so cool. And maybe it's just because I'm a fan of science fiction, but 50 years from now, when we look back at how this city was essentially incorporated today, you know, it's going to be so different. It's going to be so much more vast, and the whole space industry will have made so much progress at that point. And I feel like this is a moment in time where big things are about to happen, and this is a part of it. Like, we right now are witnessing history, and independent of the politics and all of these other things, this is incredibly fascinating. And if you're not amazed by this, then nothing will amaze you. And that's the bigger picture.